Hello, and welcome to Make a Difference, the show about how volunteers are making a difference every day here in Montgomery County. I'm your host, Lorraine Driscoll. Today, we'll discuss how county residents can volunteer to become a long-term care ombudsman with Montgomery County and regularly visit area nursing homes and assisted living facilities to provide residents with appropriate information, support, and follow-up. Don't go away, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Make a Difference. I'm your host, Lorraine Driscoll. Today, we'll be talking with Eileen Bennett, Program Manager with Montgomery County's Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program, and Dick Jourdenais, Ombudsman Representative. Dick, Eileen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us today. We're glad to be here.
Yeah.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, this is such a, you talk about wanting to volunteer with purpose. This is such a purposeful volunteer program. Eileen, you've been doing this for a little bit, a few years.
Just for about 3 decades, yes. I love it.
Tell us, what is the mission, the goal of the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program?
Well, the Ombudsman actually is delegated within statutory authority under a thing called the Older Americans Act. So we have federal regulations which allow us to be advocates for residents that live in nursing homes and assisted living communities. And within that mandate, one of our mandates is recruiting and training volunteers. So isn't that a great law that says we have to bring volunteers into the work we do? And so I have people that work with me like Dick who have been with the program, well, you've been about
6.5 years now.
Terrific, wow.
And when they come with the program, they may not have any long-term care experience at all. And part of our work is to make them an expert in long-term care issues so that they can work with the residents on problem solving. So that's our second mandate, is resolving issues and resolving problems for residents. We have a third responsibility, which is doing some legislative advocacy. So we have working with the individual residents themselves, as well as the opportunity to do some legislative dynamics so that we can talk to legislators about what would be best in long-term care settings, what kind of rules would be good for quality of life and quality of care for those residents.
Because you're on the ground, so you're
we
seeing
are
what's
on the
working and what could,
And the personal experiences and the stories we as Ombudsman bring to the legislators who make the laws. So we have a very exciting law to help us get out there into the communities and see residents where they actually live. They don't come to us, we go to them. And part of our presence is having volunteers within the program.
Great. So what does an Ombudsman Representative actually do?
Well, I try and visit my facility on a weekly basis and interact with as many residents as I can during my visits. So usually 2 to 3 hours a day during my visit time.
Once a week?
Once a week, yeah. So I talk to them, I ask them how they're doing, try and find out if they have any issues. So over time you build trust with residents and they begin to open up with you. So if they're really having a bad time, they will often talk to you. So I always tell them what we discuss is confidential, and I don't discuss it with anyone else unless you ask me to. So we only go forth if a resident asks us to on their behalf.
So Eileen, you train the volunteers in the
little bit of everything.
Okay.
We talk about the operation. How does a corporation provide care under regulations, so that we can use that in developing advocacy strategies for complaint resolution. But we spend a lot of time talking about communication. We talk about how do you promote resident rights. I brought my friend here. It's not scary to talk about resident rights.
I see it says,
I stand for quality. That happens to be this year's resident rights theme, is I stand for quality. So every year we have a focus in talking and promoting resident rights issues.
So that really sums up what you're doing.
Absolutely.
You're standing for quality. And so, Dick, when you visit the nursing home or assisted living facility, do you talk to the people in charge as well, or who all do you interact with, and how?
I touch base with the staff just to let them know I'm there, and if there are any issues, I know that I can approach them, and conversely, if they feel there are issues that might involve me, they give me a heads up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always nice to know. So occasionally there might be a discharge issue with a resident.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to go through the paperwork and notify our department anyway, but
Mm-hmm.
by knowing about it ahead of time, you can do a little bit of groundwork and find out what the reasons behind the discharge.
Mm-hmm.
Is it
And
proper?
if there's other options,
Yeah. And,
perhaps we may have other options.
That's
that
right. That's right.
Ombudsman can suggest in those discussions with the administration of the assisted living as well as the residents themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a case recently, a few months ago, where a resident in skilled nursing had received a notice from a government contractor who oversees Medicare payments to residents. And she was notified they would no longer cover her cost of about $6,000 a month in medical care.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally she was upset, and she asked for help. What can I do? They're going to put me out on the street. So I kind of recognized this as a very serious issue, and I called my supervisor, Gloria Teasley, and she came in and we started talking and got more information from the resident, from the resident's daughter who had been involved, and again, gathering all the facts that we could. And then we called for a meeting with the facility staff, the executive director, social worker, business people, to find out more about the background, what led to this case, this situation. So it turns out that the contractor who was evaluating payments had decided from information given to them by the facility that she no longer needed assistance. She could live on her own. But the resident's in a wheelchair, she has COPD, she has heart problems, she's blind in one eye, and it's kind of hard to understand how they could come to this decision. But anyway, that's what it was.
And then so you were able to intervene and
to discuss with the facility, and the facility told us, well, this goes back 3 months, and the facility is out thousands of dollars.
Right.
And so we advised the resident to appeal, and she did with the help of her daughter.
Oh, good.
So it takes, several months for this whole process to occur. But anyway, the resident's still there. I visit with her. She's getting good care, even though this administrative.
And so people know you're someone they can talk to if something that comes up that's worrisome or concerning.
Yeah.
So
and she gave us permission to intervene on her behalf too, because she felt very desperate.
And I hear you say everything's confidential unless people empower you to, which is very respectful. So if people want to volunteer with the program, how do they contact you?
Well, it's pretty easy. You pick up the phone, you give us a call. Our direct number is 240-777-3369, and that'll bring you into the main line of the program and ask for information about volunteering. You don't have to have any special background. You do have to be over 21. That's really our only requirement.
Okay.
You have to have enough time to learn. So if you like learning, we're the place to be. We do have some classroom, some online study, and we actually have monthly meetings with our volunteers for continued in-service and education about topics of interest, not only to our residents, but also to do professional development of our volunteers on a regular basis. We have really a recruitment that goes all year round. We have a little bit of emphasis a couple of times a year where we're going to have a class locally, but we also can send people to sessions that our state ombudsmen are doing.
Gotcha. So Dick, what inspired you to volunteer?
Well, one of my neighbors was a volunteer ombudsman, so we started talking. We belonged to the same book club, so
That's
it
a
came
typical
up.
way people, you hear someone tells you it's a good program.
Right.
And,
And also, my mother, in her last year of her life back in Rhode Island, spent it in a nursing home. She had been living with my sister, but my sister wasn't able to take care of her anymore. She had deteriorated quite a bit. So I flew up to Rhode Island and visited her, and sort of the care she was getting. And my sister would call me and be in tears that my mother was being neglected. They just weren't doing a good job of giving her any type of quality care. So that kind of opened my eyes to those situations. So that was always in the back of my mind, and you always feel a little bit of guilt about that. And so I just thought it was an area where, geez, there are a lot of people who could use some help and some guidance in situations like this, yeah.
And it seems like when every day you go, you find opportunities to either make a connection or help someone more formally or whatever, and really know you're making a difference.
That's right.
And it sounds like it's probably, how many volunteer ombudsmen are there?
We have active volunteer corps of anywhere between 30 and 50. We have about 225 long-term care communities, so we can always use more volunteers working with us. There's no doubt about that.
But it sounds like it's probably a neat community of volunteers who probably get to know not only get to know people in the facility they visit, the staff and the residents and such, but also the other.
They get to know each other. They do some things together.
Yeah, well, we share information. So I mentored one of the newer volunteers last year, and she came along with me for several months. And so I showed her how I do it, my visits and my approach. And so she took that in. And I said, well, you do it the way you'd like to do it too, but even though at the meetings where we have training meetings, we still touch base in how are things going at your facility, how are things going at mine, and so it's
compare notes and learn from each other.
And it's a brotherhood, sisterhood that develops.
So it's a mix of men and women, and
yeah, we are very, very lucky that we have a very diverse group. We have a lot of languages that are represented among our volunteer corps, which is very, very helpful for our residents. When we need to converse within their language, we usually have the ability to tap someone on the shoulder and say, "Come with us," so that they can tell their story in their language too.
And Dick, you were telling us beforehand that every day you visit is different.
Well, it can be challenging sometimes because you never know if you're going to face a resident with an issue or if the staff will approach you with an issue. So you kind of go in with an open mind and say, well, okay, well, let's see what happens today. And so I make my rounds. There are 3 floors in this building, and I look in on activities that involve the residents and talk to them on the side separately and just try and keep in touch with them. So I don't get to see every resident every visit, but I try and mix it up and cover them over time.
And I was inspired too, you were saying there's such a diversity of people who live in this community, that it's a rich community of, the residents are just really interesting people to get to know too.
Right. I've met some retired scientists, government scientists from NASA, and they talk a little bit about some of the research they had done years ago, and one gentleman was involved in developing certain types of rockets and things like that. It's just fascinating to meet these people. I mean, they're bright and they're still mentally competent, and they like to talk about their history and what they had done.
And I'm sure they're delighted to talk with you. Well, I'm sorry that's all the time we have. It's been wonderful talking with both of you today. One more time, remind us the phone number if people are interested in becoming a Ombudsman Representative.
Direct to us is 240-777-3369.
Awesome. It's such a volunteering with purpose and community. It sounds great. Thank you again.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
We've been talking today with Eileen Bennett with Montgomery County's Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program and Dick Jourdenais, Volunteer Ombudsman. For more information about volunteering in Montgomery County, please contact the Volunteer Center at 240-777-2600 or visit their website at www.montgomeryvolunteer.org. And remember, as a volunteer, you can make a difference.